We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. I'll be with you this morning through the 9 o'clock hour. We're going to have a very interesting guest with us this morning. His name is Dr. Michael Coffmann, and he is the president of Environmental Perspectives. He is also the executive director of Sovereignty International and also the Local Environment and Resources Network, also known as LEARN. Mr. Coffmann is the one of the key players in stopping the original Convention on Biologic Diversity. That was a treaty that was defeated back in the 90s, and he is a staunch land rights and property rights advocate, among other things, and a debunker of global warming and the Agenda 21 scam that is being perpetrated on America. He'll be joining us at about 15 minutes after the hour, and I would encourage you to listen to this program. And after the end of the program, we'll post this particular show up on YouTube, and I would encourage you to share it with some friends. What you don't know about Agenda 21 can kill you, and we're going to discuss specifically the Blueways initiative that is bound and determined to merge, essentially, Missouri and Arkansas under federal control and turn it into a national preserve, if you will, in the White River Basin. So please make sure that you stay with us this morning and that you are focusing with us on Dr. Coffmann's presentation. I think you'll find this to be a very valuable discussion. In our bullet points this morning, I want to talk about a couple of issues. One, our land for gun makers to move to Missouri project has received quite a bit of press this morning. The 10th Amendment Center has picked up a press release from Lieutenant Governor Kinder in support of the project. We have, we have also had a number of other blogs pick it up. And I spoke yesterday to a reporter over at the New American who will be doing a story on it in the next day or so as well. So if there's anything that you can do, if you have contact or influence or access to any of the industry players who might be interested in participating in that offer, please do your best to make sure that we are in front of them with the knowledge that offer is available to a gun manufacturer, accessory manufacturer, and or distributors who will move to Missouri, take up this offer of property and land, and bring some jobs to our area while helping us all to support the Second Amendment. The Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association is going to be holding their annual convention from May 31st to June 1st in St. Charles, Missouri. Now, as you know, it is free to any public official. Now, that means that it's not only open to sheriffs and law enforcement, but also to any public official who may be in office. Now, this will include individuals like judges. This will include county prosecutors, city prosecutors. This will include anyone who is in a public environment position where they are charged with upholding the Constitution. So what I would encourage is that if you would like to sponsor an individual to attend that conference, or multiple individuals, you can do that by going to the CSPOA's website, which is CSPOA. That's Charlie Sierra Papa Oscar Alpha.org. You can go there and literally click on a link there that will allow you to post a donation, and you can put it in the name of that individual. It will cover the cost of their transportation and lodging while they're there, because their admission to the event is actually no charge. So if you're a public official, please make it your business to break apart your schedule and make sure that you attend this event. schedule yourself and book yourself to be there. There will be a number of lawmen and constitutional individuals that will be speaking. This is there will be Old Monroe Chief of Police Larry Kirk, Christian County Sheriff Joey Kyle, Osage County Sheriff Michael Dixon, Warren County Sheriff Kevin Harrison, Lincoln County Sheriff John Cottle, among others. There will be a number of presentations that are done for, of course, county sheriffs, but as well as by them. And there will be other constitutional scholars and legal professionals from across the nation who will come basically together to help public officials understand what, number one, their role is, but more importantly, what their responsibilities and duties are under the Constitution as well. I will be trying to attend this event myself. And if anyone would like to sponsor my transportation and traveling charges, I would greatly appreciate that. You can simply send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. I'm actually going to try to attend this and report on it live, or at least in some portion thereof. And we'll be videotaping it, and we'll make those tapes available up on our YouTube channel as well. So if you would like to sponsor a law enforcement officer, a public official, or yours truly, I would be more than appreciative of that effort, both for them and or myself. What this program, this is the first annual convention that's been held here in Missouri. And it was created because a sheriff here in Missouri said, we can't all go out to Vegas or California. We can't take away that much time. The cost of getting out there is expensive, and we don't have the budgets for it in a lot of small and rural cities and counties and communities in Missouri. And he initially requested that Sheriff Richard Mack see if he wouldn't be willing to hold the CSPOA convention here in Missouri. Mack agreed to do that. They announced it at the Firearms Freedom Festival that was out in Springfield. And sure as shooting, here it is. May 1st through June 1st, St. Charles, Missouri. It's going to be held at the Ameristar Hotel and and Convention Center. And again, it is free to all public officials. If you are not a public official and you'd like to attend, the cost is $150 per person or $200 for the couple. And then all you've got to do is take care of your lodging and transportation. So, this is an important project, and we want to make sure that our sheriffs here are thoroughly understanding of their role constitutionally. Not just sheriffs, by the way, but city law enforcement as well. If you've got a city police chief, a city police officer who you think would benefit from the attendance at this event, why don't you encourage them to go? Encourage them to go and take their wife and make a weekend out of it, if necessary, and take a little mini vacation while at the same point in time they do something good for their own educational drive and knowledge. I think this is the kind of event that will be very, very valuable to them and your community, and I strongly encourage you to do that. We are going to take a break in a couple of moments, and again, when we return, we are going to speak with our guest this morning, who is Dr. Michael Coffmann. Again, excuse me, Dr. Coffmann is the world's leading consultant on the subject of Agenda 21. And he is extraordinarily well-versed not only in what's going on with the Agenda 21 initiatives within the United States, but also in reference to this new Blueways initiative, which you heard me break the news on about a week ago. Now, this Blueways initiative is basically putting a significant chunk of the Ozarks, the White River Basin, which is everything from Springfield all the way almost up to north to Jefferson City, all the way east to Poplar Bluff, and then it covers all of the ground down to Arkansas and at least 20% of Arkansas. And I got to tell you, this is the kind of thing which will destroy our communities, our cities, our counties, our towns. We will be put under federal control for the vast majority of the zoning and regulatory issues. This is Agenda 21 being instituted upon us, with or without our in fact, they didn't even open it up to public comment. They just announced it. And so this is just another example of tyranny from our federal government. Dr. Coffmann was instrumental in the late 90s in destroying the Senate's ratification of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, and he's also testified directly before the UN Assembly. So I think you'll find him to be an extraordinarily valuable guest, and this should be an opportunity for you to learn quite a bit about, one, Agenda 21, two, about the Blueways Initiative and where that's taking us. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host. We'll be back in a few moments. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back.
Kim Commando, a.k.a. the Digital Goddess, keeps you plugged in with a daily feature, Kim Commando's Digital Minute. This segment keeps you informed with what's going on in the technology world, along with new tips and tricks to use at home to improve those computer skills. Catch Commando at 7:22 a.m. during Cooper & Company on the Ozarks Best News Talk. If the feature has you craving more, join Kim, the Digital Goddess, Saturdays from noon to 3 on the Ozarks Best News Talk, 107.1 The Point.
Hi, it's Hugh Hewitt on the next Hugh Hewitt Show. The next governor of Virginia, Ken Cuccinelli. The current senator from South Dakota, John Thune. I'll also be joined by Bill Kristol, and we'll talk with all of them about immigration reform and what is ahead in the United States Senate, and Marco Rubio. Don't miss any minute of the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Sundays from 6 till 7, following Money Talk with Bob Brinker, it's the Weekend Journal with Hugh Hewitt on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1.
All right, we are back, and again, we are going to be joined in just a moment by Dr. Michael Coffmann. Again, Dr. Coffmann is truly an expert on Agenda 21 and was instrumental in defeating the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, which was one of the first attempts to institute Agenda 21 in the United States. And he's also testified before the UN Assembly. Good morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining with us. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. I'm glad to be with you.
You know, we are seeing Agenda 21 instituted into our cities, our towns, our communities, and our counties through zoning applications, where they are effectively, taking away our property rights and instituting these draconian things that limit our ability to utilize the property that we own in a constitutional and just ethical, moral manner. But recently, this White River Blueways watershed has been announced. This is the second one of these initiatives that was announced since May of 2012 by the Secretary of the Interior, Ken Salazar, under the direction of President Obama. And this, one of the statements that's the earliest in here is the initiative is part of President Obama's America's Great Outdoors Initiative to establish a community-driven conservation and recreation agenda for the 21st century. I think I know where this is coming from.
Yes, you do. It's basically, I'm not real familiar with the Blueways program yet because just two of them have been announced.
Right.
There's going to be a lot more coming down the road here.
Right.
And we need to get involved. It's one of those issues that I can sum it up in one sentence, and basically anything that has the words community-driven, that has stakeholders, that has some sort of words to indicate that what we're going to create is paradise and
right. Sustainable, preservation, conservation, sure.
Yes,
conservation. They're all buzzwords.
Now, the word conservation isn't bad, but what they mean by conservation is preservation,
right.
And that is bad. And all of that basically goes back to Agenda 21. Basically, you have to understand. Let me give you some background on Agenda 21, because many in your listening audience probably have never even heard the term, or if they had, it was always in a conspiratorial way and so
right.
forth, that it turns them off and thinks we're people with tinfoil hats and all the rest. Agenda 21, according to Google, if you do Google Agenda 21, you'll find that there's 350 million web pages on Agenda 21. Now, are you going to say basically that it's unknown, that it's really not important? 350 million? I don't think so. Why is it not known in the United States? Because we have a little phenomenon here in the United States called property rights.
Yeah.
And property rights prevent Agenda 21 from being implemented. You cannot implement Agenda 21 without destroying individual private property rights. You cannot do it. It depends on government control of private property. And as a consequence, they don't want you to know what they're doing. And the Blueways program is exactly what that is designed to do, is to sneak in through the back door, unannounced, and gradually take over your private property rights under the illusion that you're creating a fantastic program that's going to serve the people, and it won't. It will destroy you. It literally will destroy you. Now, where did Agenda 21 come from? Agenda 21 came from the United Nations. Actually, it came from an organization called the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. It actually goes way back to the Club of Rome in the 1970s, but I'm not going to get into that ancient history. The IUCN is an organization that is basically designed, has 500 or 700 different non-government organizations like the Sierra Club and Nature Conservancy and so forth, but also our federal government. Most of our federal agencies that deal anything with land, like the Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, right, or the
USDA,
EPA, and so
EPA,
forth,
all of them, sure.
All of them are members of this IUCN. They wrote the Agenda 21. Now, this is our federal agencies getting into the same bed behind closed doors with the environmental organizations in this country and around the world.
Right.
That should be illegal. I've tried to point it out to Congress many times. It falls on deaf ears, of course. And as a consequence, they're able to do this. Now, it came out in 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. It's a 40-chapter document. It doesn't have hard law. In other words, they can't enforce it. But it's done voluntarily by the nations that sign it. And President Bush did sign it. President Clinton then began to implement it. We stopped it from being ratified, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which was Chapter 15. Now, these 40 chapters basically cover every single aspect of our lives. You have to understand this. It covers and controls every single aspect of our lives. It is this utopian idea that the centralized government can actually benefit everyone because it knows better than anyone else. The socialist mentality is really at the heart of Agenda 21. And what happened was we stopped the Convention on Biological Diversity 1 hour before it was scheduled for the cloture vote and then ultimately the ratification vote. That's how close we came to that particular implementation. Right? And that would have had hard law behind it. And every one of these 40 chapters has some sort of a treaty behind it that does have hard law. And we need to be very conscious of this because there are interlocking treaties. Once all of this maze of treaties are actually implemented, we are sunk. There's no way that we're going to be able to survive as a free nation because the government will control your life and everything that you do. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I know that sounds alarming and over the top, but folks, I'm not even really emphasizing it enough because it is really, really dangerous. Now, how did it get in the United States? Because we basically have stopped it in a lot of different ways. What happened was in 1993, President Clinton created the President's Council on Sustainable Development, which had 25 members. Ironically, 12 of them were members of the IUCN. Are you beginning to see a pattern here?
Yeah.
The very organizations that wrote this Agenda 21 were in charge of developing the U.S. response to it.
They're loading the dice and then claiming that this is a fair and honest game.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, yes. In 1996, they came out with Sustainable America. Now, Sustainable America has 7 sub-documents, which includes cities and so forth, as well as natural resources, rivers, and that type of thing. This is one of the components of those 7 sub-documents. Sustainable America is America's answer to Agenda 21. In other words, that fulfills the requirements of Agenda 21.
Right.
So we're not specifically implementing Agenda 21 in the United States unless you're an ICLEI community, and then you are, because it comes right out of the United Nations. Actually, there's one step in between, and that's Sustainable America. And what we're seeing now is that every federal agency is implementing Sustainable America, and by default, Agenda 21. It's very, very easy to understand once you understand the players behind it. Now, what does this do? It basically says they'll throw out an enticement of several millions of dollars for the local community to decide how they want to envision their future. Of course, that's a controlled process. They basically set up these workshops and input sessions and so forth and control what the people are thinking. They'll say, for instance, put two pictures up there, one of a ratty neighborhood and one of a beautiful neighborhood. Which one do you want? Well, obviously, you're going to want the beautiful neighborhood,
sure.
Right? I mean, this is the system that they use.
This is the Delphi method, by the way.
The Delphi method to get you to a certain conclusion.
Right.
But what that means is that if you want these things in your community, the city or the town or the county or whatever the case might be, has to control those people's private property rights in order to achieve that particular vision. There is no other way they can do it.
I understand.
And therefore, you lose your private property rights. They're transferred from the individual to the government, in this case the local government, but ultimately it's the national and global government, the United Nations or whatever it turns out to be, that controls the parameters that what the local government can utilize.
Well, a couple of years ago, there was the Scenic Riverways, which was done by the National Forestry Service and Park Service here in Missouri. Yeah. And we're now seeing the results of that, where they're telling farmers you've got to build a fence 100 yards back from the edge of the water on either side if the river runs through your property, and you have to let that land go fallow. You can't grow crops on it because we can't have either the pesticides and or the fertilizers running into the river, and you're not allowed to run cattle on it, which in Missouri is second only to Texas and Florida in terms of cattle production. And you can't, so effectively you have to let this land go back to nature. There's nothing you can do with it. You can't live on it, you can't let animals on it, and you can't grow on it. So I don't know what else you can do with it. And we have seen eminent domain used over and over and over and over again to remove people from properties that were adjacent to the river, expel them from the community. And now they have this buffer zone on both sides of the river that's basically a quarter of a mile on either side of the river that takes over, and it's all National Park Service now. They're doing the same thing here, but this area is 18 million acres.
Yes, exactly.
And this is run by the Forest Fish and Wildlife Service, Army Corps of Engineers, the USGS for both Missouri and Arkansas, the USDA, the National Park Service, and the Lower Mississippi Valley Joint Venture. Now, those are the federal side. The state side is the Missouri Department of Conservation, Arkansas Fish and Game, et cetera, all of the different natural heritage commissions. On the non-governmental side, listen to the list, and this'll throw you. Ducks Unlimited, National Wildlife Refuge Association, the Nature Conservancy, both the Missouri and Arkansas chapters, the Conservation Fund, Audubon, Missouri and Arkansas chapters, the Arkansas Canoe Club, whatever that is, and the Arkansas Association of Conservation Districts. And so essentially what they've got is these are the, as they call them, stakeholder organizations.
Right.
And they say this is a public and private enterprise with businesses involved. You know who the two businesses are? A small G&G Irrigation LLC, which according to Manta is a 2-person organization. And the second one is Greenway Equipment, which is, like a chain of franchises that sell John Deere tractors. That's the public side of this thing. That's the business community side of this thing.
Right.
And what they're talking about is, and they are specifically addressing and pointing out that they are going to take people's land away. I mean, they're saying that this will protect valuable floodplain habitat through conservation easements and acquisitions from willing landowners.
Right.
First of all, easement automatically tells you, yes, you own it, but you can't do anything with it unless we give you the permission. And then when you start talking about acquisitions from willing landowners, let me tell you, the word willing is the key operative phrase there. There's nothing willing about these landowners who are about to lose their property. And so, the problem as we see it, this is a replication, but on a grand scale of what we saw with the scenic riverways, acquisitions that were done by the federal government, 10 or 20 years ago. So when we come back, if we could have you talk a little bit about how that shoe in the door or the camel's nose under the tent kind of mentality about this, I'd like you to inform our audience about how zoning and this type of shoehorn is being used to strip their property rights and to basically subvert us all into this global slavery position. So we're going to take a break, folks. We're speaking with Dr. Michael Coffmann. He is a foremost expert on Agenda 21 and on global diversity, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The Commander-in-Chief coming down on the IRS as a probe shows some of the agency's offices targeted conservatives for extra scrutiny.
The president says he's now seen the internal IRS report and calls the findings intolerable and inexcusable.
Fox Radio's Rich Johnson in Washington.
As far as exactly what IRS agents demanded of Tea Party groups.
Donors' names, personal information about them. They wanted to know whether they were going to run for office or have ever run for office.
That's Larry Nordvig, head of a Tea Party group in Richmond, Virginia, on the Record with Greta Van Susteren.
The House Ways and Means Committee will hear from the acting director of the IRS on Friday. And a jury in Phoenix back in court today to decide whether the death penalty should be an option for Jodi Arias, convicted last week of murdering her one-time boyfriend. Fox News. We report, you decide.
Thanks to our friends over at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance. You can reach Brian down there at 870-492-4030. It's located a half mile east of Walmart on 3225 Route 62, Mountain Home. My dear friend Mary over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, the best damn bakery in 100 miles. She's located at number 2 Evans Arcade, and you can call her at 255-2253. My friends over at Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They have an outstanding lunch opportunity. You can, from 11 till 2, and you can have salad and pizza, something tasty and something good for you. Our friends Bill Stone over at Stone Construction at 293-0116. If you're considering doing any kind of remodeling, new or custom construction and or light commercial, give Bill a call and let him bid on your next project. Our friends at the Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue, 417-257-7799. They can be found at thebatterystation.com. Our friends over at West Plains Pawn and Gun, an outstanding opportunity with 400 firearms under glass. You can reach them at 417-256-3000, and they are located at westplainspawn.com. Located physically at Highway 160, about a mile past Walmart on the right-hand side. And finally, the sponsor of our phone lines, Wits End Classic Barbershop, located on the square in West Plains. Best haircut you can get for $10, and a nice young man as well. Please visit and support our sponsors.
If you're looking for great deals on iPads or Kindles, look no further than your neighborhood Radio Shack authorized sales center. They've got great deals on the latest iPads and Kindles. Maybe you need a new GPS or an MP3 player to get your music library ready for those barbecues. Whatever your electronic needs, stop by your local neighborhood Radio Shack authorized dealer in West Plains at 1408 Southern Hills Shopping Center or call 417-256-1819.
Weather is a service of News Talk 1071 The Point. Contact Josh or Cody at 255-2548 for more information on making weather sponsorships part of your marketing plans.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, a mainly clear sky, mostly sunny through the day with a couple of thunderstorms, the high 82. Partly to mostly cloudy with a chance for a thunderstorm tonight, low 60. Mostly cloudy tomorrow with a thunderstorm in spots, high 76. Partly sunny with a thunderstorm on Friday. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
Hi, I'm Scott Corman, president of Community First. We want to be your bank. We believe in the strength of our communities, businesses, families, and future. We're not just locally owned, but community owned. And we operate today just as we started, by living up to our name, putting you and our communities first.
Living up to our name, community first, banking company.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
All right, we're speaking with Dr. Michael Coffmann, who is a foremost expert and considered to be one of the United States' most knowledgeable individuals about Agenda 21, its implementation, its design, its creation, and I'm very grateful that he's joined us, but he's delivering bad news to us. But I promise, Doctor, we will not shoot the messenger.
So, well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that.
You know, we are so besieged with this everywhere that we go, and I don't think, you know, I mean, this thing was instituted without an opportunity for anyone to. I mean, they may have done some secret public comment meeting or whatever, but you know, this was completely done without any knowledge of any kind to anyone. It was just one of these pop announcements that came out in January, and since then it hasn't really even gotten any press. Nobody's talking about it. Unless they're the stakeholder organizations who utilize the same language over and over and over and over again, like talking points. And, you know, it's all about, we're going to put $22 million into soil and water conservation and, you know, blah, 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 which, you know, $22 million in an area that's 18 million acres, do the math. What, you know, right. I mean, that's not even a flea on the elephant's hiney.
Exactly. So, it's just a little about $1.50 per acre.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing you can do with $1.50 per acre. So it is really, and this is what I'm finding all over the country. This isn't unique to your area. It's happening everywhere across the country. Not the Blueways. That's just a new program that's just getting started. But this whole implementation of Sustainable America, i.e. Agenda 21, is happening in every state, most counties across the United States, and the people who are implementing have no idea what they're doing. It sounds wonderful, motherhood and apple pie, we're going to solve the world's problems, and so forth, but they always hide how much it's going to cost and who has to pay in the way of losing your private property rights and therefore your liberty, because if the government can control your private property rights, they control you, because you have to have property to live. And if they control what you can do on that property, they control your life. There's no way out of it. You lose your liberties. Basically, the first 10 amendments, well, the entire amendment list is null and void because the government has total control over your life at that particular point. That's why it's very well discussed in every other nation in the world that is implementing this Agenda 21. People are very furious about it, but they have no recourse. Why? Because the government controls them.
Yeah. That's the problem is, you know, once we give them this control, and we don't even realize they've taken it for all intents and purposes,
exactly.
The next thing that happens is they start putting these use limits on what you can do with your property, how you can utilize it, who you can sell it to, and you know, for all intents and purposes, once that occurs, we're finished. And most people don't even realize that it's actually happening this way. They have no concept at all. And you know, even our cities and our counties, and is there any move afoot to educate the Congress and the federal side about what is happening here and how this is being implemented in a backdoor fashion, or do they not even care?
Well, they care to an extent. However, because Agenda 21 has been totally hidden from the political system here in this country, the first reaction of any politician who's up to his eyeballs, even if he's a good politician, he's up to his eyeballs in things that he has to do, he doesn't want to take on necessarily, or she, another issue. And Agenda 21 is one of these side issues that sounds conspiratorial, as we talked about before, and that's what they're being told, if they even hear about it at all, and therefore they don't want to have anything to do with it. And so they don't attend. Now, that's changing now. I noticed in this year, towards the end of last year and this year, I'm getting to have county commissioners, city mayors, even state legislatures attending my meetings. In fact, I just had one 3 weeks ago with the governor of Maine who actually attended. So it is really a slow process, and unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is going to be implemented, and there's no return once it's implemented, and they're going to learn about it too late.
Right.
After the fact.
That's the problem. Is by the time they learn about it, you know, it's already too late to deal with.
Yes.
I mean, you know, we have this anti-Agenda 21 bill that has gone to our governor, and he hasn't signed it yet. But if he doesn't sign it in 15 days, it becomes law. But I mean, this thing is pretty clear. It says political subdivision, state, city, county, incorporated, etc. The state of Missouri and all political subdivisions shall not adopt or implement policy recommendations that deliberately or inadvertently infringe or restrict private property rights without due process, as may be required by policy recommendations originating in or traceable to Agenda 21, adopted by the UN in 92 at its conference, Since the United Nations has accredited and enlisted numerous non-governmental and intergovernmental organizations to assist in the implementation of policies relative to Agenda 21, the state of Missouri and all political subdivisions are prohibited from entering into any agreement with, expending any sum of money for, receiving funds from, contracting services from, or giving financial aid to those NGOs and intergovernmental organizations as defined in Agenda 21. I'm hopeful that once this becomes law in our state, we can point back to this and lead the trail and make this what would be traceable to Agenda 21. Because under this, then we could literally say, as a state, sorry, we're nullifying that. You can't do that here.
Yeah, in fact, I'm actually writing a pamphlet right now that'll help you do that. It'll be probably in 1st of June, maybe middle of June. And it'll take you right through the various steps as to how it got from actually the Club of Rome back in the 1970s and all the way to the current situation where you're facing. Now, I can't go into all the individual programs. Sure. There's literally tens of thousands of them, like the Blueway, but nonetheless, you can see where it's coming from, and there's a paper trail there that you can go back to and prove that this is exactly what's happening. The other side of the issue that you just mentioned just before we went into the break was that people are unaware of this. They don't seem to understand it. And part of the reason for that's the other half of the equation here, is that we have been trained as a population not to see it.
Right.
Because of our public education system, all of the historical value
and our
of
media.
Yes, both education and media. But in our public education system, you will not find any textbook that really has a foundational understanding of why we have the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and so forth, and why property rights are so essential to freedom and wealth creation. In fact, you cannot create wealth without private property rights.
Right,
You literally cannot do it. We don't have time to get into that at this point, but literally you lose your property rights and you lose all of your ability to create wealth, and there goes the middle class. It's gone.
Right.
And that's why the middle class is starting to shrink. President Obama keeps saying, I'm trying to help the middle class. No, he's not. He's taking the middle class away in all his policies. He's literally destroying the middle class because he's taking away private property rights. And I can't overemphasize that enough. It's really critically important, and all of that information is to help you understand what in the world is going on was never taught in our public schools in the last 50 years.
Right.
It's been basically stripped of our public education. It used to be there. It used to be one of the foundational things of every public educational system in America. But it's gone now, and it's gone deliberately because they know they cannot control the people of the United States unless they take their private property rights away from them.
Sure. And the way that they're doing that is they're doing it without actual, in this Blueways thing, the way they're doing that is not by actually, here's a statement from it. The designation does not establish a new protective status or regulation, but is intended to recognize and support existing local and regional conservation, recreation, and restoration efforts by coordinating ongoing federal, state, and local activities. So what they're saying is this is not a new protected status or a new regulation, but it will be coordinating federal, state, and local activities of regulation. I mean,
that's right.
That's like saying, well, this isn't a law. We're creating a commission who's going to create law, but this isn't a new law. But the commission that will create the new law, those will be law.
That's correct.
How absurd is that on its face? I mean,
I know it is, but the people basically are involved in their own lives. They read the surface words and think, well, this is wonderful, we should do it, without understanding what their long-term objectives are. The end game is to strip them of their private property rights without them even knowing it. And because we are an ignorant society, and I don't mean dumb or stupid or anything like that.
No.
We're very smart. There's nothing different about us than our forefathers. It's just that we have been trained in our educational system not to understand why private property rights are so essential. I want to ask a question of the audience. Just think about this for a while. If this is so wonderful, why haven't this been thought of before in previous generations? Why is it just coming up now? Basically, it's because our previous generations understood what it was doing. Back in the 1970s, the Rockefeller Foundation and so forth spent millions and millions of dollars trying to get federal land use control. They failed. Why? Because the legislatures and the Congress understood what that meant, and they refused to allow the federal government to do it.
The problem,
we have lost all of that knowledge.
The problem with that, Doctor, is that would require that our schools teach, one, history, true history, not revisionist history. Two, that they teach our students critical thinking skills. And three, that they're not promoting and pushing these types of agendas with constantly uttering the words sustainable, coalition, public-private partnership. I mean, they utilize all these words and they redefine language to achieve their goal, and they're brainwashing our youth with this in public schools. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'd like to just touch one more time on your experience, especially with the UN Biodiversity Group and how that affected this. We'll be right back.
When our founding fathers secured the constitutional right of the people to keep and bear arms, they also added that right shall not be infringed.
We're commandeering the radio station in the name of...
This is Cooper of Cooper & Company. Tune in weekday mornings from 6 to 8 for your chance to win Glenn Beck's book, Control, Exposing the Truth About Guns. Like I said, if you want a copy, just listen in to Cooper & Company weekday mornings. You can catch Glenn Beck on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1 The Point from 2 to 5 every weekday.
I had this illness that really made me powerless over alcohol, and that insisted that I got drunk. And so I got drunk. It doesn't have anything to do with trying to control it. An alcoholic who picks up the first drink will pick up the second drink. I can't say to anyone, no, don't drink. But I can say that when you decide you don't want to drink, come to AA. The door to AA is always open. Alcoholics Anonymous. It works. Look us up. Check your phone book, newspaper, or AA.org.
They say they want to control your guns, but what they really want to do is control you. Hi, it's Glenn Beck. Since the gun debate was settled in 1791, it's obvious this debate is really about control. Control over taxes, health care, schools, and yes, our Second Amendment rights. My new book, Control, Exposing the Truth About Guns, picks apart line by line the idiotic gun control arguments being spewed all over the media. From Piers Morgan to Michael Bloomberg to Rachel Maddow, the lies and now. Control, a new book by me, Glenn Beck. Pick it up or download your copy today. Visit glennbeck.com for more.
It's a call and make your voice heard.
All right, we are returning, and we're speaking again with Dr. Michael Coffmann. And, you were instrumental in defeating this UN Convention on Biological Diversity. So I guess my question is, how is Agenda 21 a re-implementation of that, but under another name, or was it the other way around, that the UN Convention on Biological Diversity was part of the Agenda 21 drive?
The Convention on Biological Diversity was part of the UN drive. It was Chapter 15 of Agenda 21.
Okay.
However, even though we stopped it in the U.S. Senate an hour before it was scheduled for the cloture vote was scheduled, it's being implemented. You were actually talking about the Biodiversity Treaty earlier in the program when you were talking about these 100-yard versus and then eventually quarter-mile setbacks.
Right.
That is what's called the Wildlands Project. That's we have these maps that really illustrate exactly what this is intended to do, and we took those on the Senate floor to stop the ratification of the treaty. They basically want to put one half of the United States, 50% of the United States, into wilderness.
Right.
Along streams and waterways and so forth. So that's the ultimate end game of the Blue Way program.
Where can our listeners find those maps?
They can go to EPI-US.com. EPI-US.com.
Okay.
And then go to our store, and they'll be on the store under the heading maps. Basically, it's a powerful visual message of what this particular aspect of Agenda 21 is designed to do. It has stopped more things from being implemented across the country. Back during Clinton's administration, they had the American Heritage Rivers program. Well, the American Heritage Rivers program was a precursor to the Blueway program. And basically, they wanted to tie up all the land in an entire watershed. And the lower Mississippi River was part of that.
Yep.
Well, you tie up that part of the Mississippi, you've tied up 2/3 of the American continent.
Right.
Because of the fact that all of the watersheds upstream from that cover about 2/3 of the land area of the United States. It was another sneaky way to try to get control over a vast area of the United States. We exposed them. These maps exposed them, and nothing was ever done with that particular program. And I think, and I'm going to hope, if I have some time, I am so busy right now, I need to start concentrating on the Blueways program and providing background material for people to use in public hearings and so forth. I've had people literally show these maps to audiences, and the presenters from the federal government or the state government just get up and walk out the door because they know they've been defeated.
Right. I think that the part of the problem is that there's no intelligence coming to us from the Department of the Interior about where these are and the proposed new Blueways that they look at for other areas of the country. We're only the second one. And they only introduced this less than a year ago. This was done in May of 2012 when they created this program. So basically, there's been no fair warning. There was no shot across the bow. And if they are allowing public comment, it's done in such a way that nobody ever actually sees the notification that there's a public comment window.
Right.
And, for all intents and purposes, this is administrative agencies run amok who are creating law that parades about as, or really what they are is rules and regulations that parade about as law, which is extra constitutional on its face in the first place. But more importantly, what people don't realize is that by this designation, if we cannot defeat this, for all intents and purposes, you will never be able to, this will change everything about whether or not, how you can use your land. Can you build a home on it? What do you do with sewage? What do you do with the expansion of a city sewer system when the county or the city want to grow and they need to expand the sewage treatment system? What kind of use those rivers can be put to? When we got the scenic riverways in the Ozarks here, let me tell you, it was, the became a national scenic riverway, and it did do some good in terms of cleaning up the river. But I got to tell you, for the people who live in the area here and on that river, it was terrible. Now they're incorporating that scenic riverway into this, massive 19 million or 18 million acre parcel that is like taking a postage stamp, which was the scenic riverways, and now this thing is not a postage stamp. It's the size of a football stadium.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I see nothing good coming out of this other than, a lot of press and media will go on about how wonderful this is, but those people don't live here. And they're not the ones who are going to pay the ultimate price when your rights are so restricted that, you can't do anything with that. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able, they're cutting cars out, curtailing your freedom to move about and what you can do with your property. And the whole goal, of course, is to narrow us under Agenda 21 into these little work village communities, if you will, while leaving the vast majority of the world or the planet, or at least the United States at any rate, to go pristine again, right?
That's exactly right, because even in the Wildlands Project and the Convention on Biological Diversity, fully another 70% or so of what's left is highly controlled, regulated land to protect the core attributes of the wilderness areas that they have designated. So there will be no more this kind of concept of private property rights. It's gone.
Right.
And without private property rights, I can't overemphasize it enough. If you actually plot the gross domestic product on a per capita basis over an index of private property rights, there is a good correlation. The less property rights, the less the per capita income and the gross domestic product there is in a nation. Those nations having no property rights are right down in the $1,000 a year income basis. Now, we have fallen from number 3 on that curve to number 16 in just 10 years.
Wow.
Because of the encroaching regulations that we're facing and stripping us of our private property rights. People who have experienced this are screaming at the top of their lungs, but nobody's listening.
Yeah.
Because they don't think it's going to affect them. They got something from nothing from this guy. He had to pay it with his private property rights. because they now have a scenic view or whatever it is that they want. But the people who gain from that eventually are also going to suffer. Now, you mentioned earlier that one of the participants in this is the Ducks Unlimited.
Yep.
They're involved in all of this kind of stuff. But let me tell you, folks, the reason they want to preserve, they want to enlarge and so forth, their duck hunting capability.
Right.
Well, and I understand that. It's human nature. We want to do what's going to benefit us.
Sure.
But sooner or later, they're not going to allow duck hunting either.
Right.
I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It may be 50 years before it happens, but they will pay the piper for their activity now.
Sure. What they've done is they've enlisted these groups to basically pay and support for their own enslavement, which is, such a dichotomy and such irony. It's shameful. One of the aspects that you hear a lot of Agenda 21 proponents and supporters say, and I can't say I've ever read this in their documentation, is the significant reduction in global population. Now, I can't say that I've read that in an Agenda 21 document, and you're far more knowledgeable about this than I. You may be able to point to something. But when you talk to these folks who are the supporters of that, including in this president's cabinet and administration, they talk about vast amounts of population reduction, which means, that a lot of us have to go.
Yes.
I mean,
in fact, we have the documentation from the United Nations itself that shows, in order for them to accomplish the goals of Agenda 21, the human population needs to be reduced from somewhere about 6 or 7 billion people down to no more than 2 billion people, where you have basically serfs out on the land working the land for food and so forth, and everything else tied up. And just a few of the nobility. Now, I mean, they don't actually use those words,
but
that's exactly because the middle class is gone.
Right. The problem with that, of course, is that means that somewhere between 5 and 6 billion of us are excess capacity right now.
Yes.
How are they planning on getting rid of those 5 or 6 billion?
Yeah, it was also in this Global Biodiversity Assessment, which is the background paper for the treaty itself. They actually talked about the fact that they're not going to be able to allow the use of fertilizers and pesticides, even though those created the Green Revolution, which increased our food production capabilities by 100%.
So between the lines, that means what? Mass starvation?
Mass starvation. That's what it means. I mean, it was right in this document. They don't say they're going to accomplish it through mass starvation.
Right.
They give all the tools that you can see it. This is what their long-term objectives are. This 100-yard foot setback, now a quarter of a mile setback, and so forth that you were talking about. That's because of the drainage of fertilizers and pesticides and so forth that may or may not be happening.
But when we talk about an 18 million acre area this size, you have, Missouri and Arkansas are hugely agricultural states. We're talking about the breadbasket of America being decimated because what they're going to say is you can no longer commercially or privately farm on this land because it has to be allowed to go back to nature and a natural state for conservation purposes. And that means in Arkansas, all the rice farms, you have no idea, by the way, how much rice is produced in Arkansas. It's massive. It's like a little mini China.
No, I didn't. I suppose in southern Arkansas that would be the case.
But here's the kicker. You have to realize that rice is by nature grown in what? Marshy and wet areas. So what you're going to end up seeing here is the next step that they're going to say is, okay, we can't have these farms down here because this is, watershed and blah, blah, blah. And, so I can already smell how this is headed and where this is going, which is essentially to the next implementation will be to say all of this 18 acres is now prohibited from agricultural use. And the next thing now we've got, basically almost a full-size state taken out of the agricultural mix in the United States of America. So
that is very, very true. You couldn't have nailed it any clearer than that. Here in the state of Maine, we have water everywhere. it basically means there is no arable land that people can use in the state of Maine because all of it's connected to some sort of waterway.
Exactly.
Directly connected within 200 or 300 yards usually.
Well, listen, we're out of time, and I apologize. I'd love to have you back on, and I'll speak with your office about having another appointment with you to come back on and help educate our folks, because I'll tell you, we're in big trouble here, and we need guys like you who are out there, beating the drum for us and helping to educate us. Thank you very, very much.
You bet. EPI-US.com.
Yes, sir. I'll make sure I promote that for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, that was Dr. Michael Coffmann, and he is, probably the foremost expert. We're out of time. What I'm going to do is post some stuff up on our Facebook and YouTube and website. Please make sure that you get there, and let's make sure that we're fighting this.
Ladies and gentlemen,
this is KBMV Birch Tree is the Ozarks best news talk, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Fox News Radio, I'm Dave Anthony. He won't be killed for killing babies, but a Philadelphia abortion doctor finds out more of his punishment today. Fox News Radio's Jeff Manasso has more live.
In exchange for not appealing, Kermit Gosnell was spared the death penalty and given